slide in a little bit here. Can I get in front?
Do you want to get in front?
Just so everyone's in the
Yeah, just be careful about leaning too far to
Yeah.
your right. Catch your shoulder.
Yeah. that
So I'll
works.
look at you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I always start, you could tell me
Okay.
your name and what you do and why I would be interviewing you for this documentary.
Tough question. My name is Greg Sorensen. I'm the president of NAGE Local 282, and I represent about 3,000 state employees in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. These are attorneys, accountants, program coordinators, people who are sort of like mid-management kind of positions in the Commonwealth. And I'm being interviewed today because basically I was bullied about 24 years ago in my work. I worked as at the time, a training director or manager of training for an agency that deals with abuse and neglect of children. And lo and behold, I got a new director, and that person was abusive toward me in her role as director of the unit. And I looked to my union for help, and they couldn't help me. So as it turned out, I was able to stay in my position. The bully was told to leave after a while. That was after half of the unit was decimated, people quit. But luckily I was able to stay, and I swore that I would find language in the union contract or for the union to be able to deal with issues like this. And this was quite a while back. So as Providence had it, I knew the president of the union. He had worked in the unit that I was working in. He was looking for a successor. He talked with me about my interest, and I said, yeah, I'll be interested. I'm interested, yeah. Because of the way I was being treated at work. So this was a real career change for me. But I set about finding language that pertained to the treatment that I was getting at the time. And I found it when Professor David Yamada came to give a talk to our stewards at NAGE. This was about 2008, and David had been addressing our entire stewardship, about 350 people. And he started asking questions and asking people, have you experienced this? Have you experienced that? Have you been feeling this way? Have you been feeling that way? And he said, how many of you believe that you've been bullied at work? And everybody in the room raised their hands, including me. And I thought, whoa. This is bigger than just me. David is a professor at Suffolk. He asked the right questions. I got to meet this man. And I immediately after his presentation, this was in a snowstorm in Boston at the time when everybody was rushing to get out from the training. But I spoke with David right there, and we started our friendship. He led me to Gary Namey, who is the director of the Workplace Bullying Institute. And I contacted Gary immediately. And I started working with the two of them about forging language for our contract. So that led to our negotiations with the Commonwealth. And in 2009, I was able to successfully negotiate the first language. It was a new article in our contract about bullying in the workplace. The article is entitled Mutual Respect. And basically what it addresses is what are the hostile, humiliating, and intimidating behaviors that are causing the unrest in the workplace. So that was negotiated into our contract. That has been enormously successful. I've been able to help a lot of people through that article. It's a lot more work for me because the big part of the work is identifying the situations, the problems in terms that are understandable to others. So my role as a president and representing my members is to help them be understood to others so that an investigation will be able to take place, and that investigation will understand the many different factors that are going into creating that unhealthy workplace. And as I said, it's been enormously successful. I've helped well over 150 people so far since 2009. And it's not that the Commonwealth was reluctant at first to change the language or introduce a new article. They feared that it would open up the floodgates. And I wasn't exactly sure about that, but I figured this would be a small percentage. And I was right. It is a small percentage. And the learning effect that came as a result of that the language in the contract has been very, very helpful in preventing stuff from even showing up. So it's both remedial, it takes care of the problems, and it's also preventative as well. And that's much the way that the Healthy Workplace is framed as well. The Healthy Workplace Bill, and I'm hoping that David Yamato will be able to speak to this as eloquently as he always does. But the Healthy Workplace Bill looks at both sides of the equation. It looks at both on the target, the person who's being bullied, but it also looks at and addresses the work side of the bill, which is, and we get a lot of flack sometimes from people, advocates who we're working with who've been bullied themselves. It provides some protections for the employer, so long as they're putting in place policies, procedures, practices that and training that speak against bullying in the workplace. They have some protections under the law, and they should have some protections because they're taking responsibility for their workplace. It's those employers that don't want to know about it. They want to keep it under wraps. They want to deny the whole thing. Those are the people who should be held accountable, because bullying is extraordinarily harmful to people. I've seen people just, the lights get turned off in their eyes. It's very much a spiritual thing that happens to them. Their spirit is crushed by these people who are exquisite at telling them that they're no good, they were never any good, they can't ever accomplish anything. Why don't they listen? Why don't they pay attention? Why don't they do their job? And the list just goes on, the messages that are given to folks. It's just amazing how harmful these bullies can be. And my experience has been that they will not stop until they're stopped. But they can stop, and they can be made to stop. And perhaps there is some possibility that maybe they could change their ways. But I've come to believe that the bullies that we knew in schoolyard many, many years ago grew up. And they got ahead over the broken backs of a lot of other people. They kissed up and they kicked down, and they made their careers out of doing damage to other people. And they need to be stopped. So we're very hopeful that the Healthy Workplace Bill will start getting infused throughout the country. And right now in Massachusetts, we're pretty far ahead of the curve in getting this through. I'm really hoping this legislative session that it's going to be passed. And if it does, Massachusetts has been first many, many times in the past. And I'm hoping that we'll be first again, and we'll help other states to get the Healthy Workplace Bill passed. Right now, I believe Gary has about 29 other states that have legislation introduced. Poor David, he runs around all over the place trying to help out and move through log jams. But here in Massachusetts, we're really blessed because I've been able to get the power of the union, NAGE, behind us in trying to get this bill passed. Our national president, David Holloway, has been a solid supporter of the Healthy Workplace Bill. He gets it. He understands the value of it. And he's also witnessed the value of having Article 6A, the mutual respect, in our contract. It really makes our union quite unique in helping to serve our members and ensure that they have a healthy workplace.
Wow, that's terrific.
Rick, can I just scoot 2 inches to the floor?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Great. You covered a lot of territory.
I know.
Which was great. I'd just like to backtrack a
Absolutely.
little bit. Could you talk about, if you're comfortable, what did the bullying look like that you experienced?
Well, my experience of the bullying, it was I think you could better frame it as abusive supervision. It was very deficit focused. I could do no right. I was always waiting for the shoe to fall. I had been managing a 15-day training program every month for social workers. I would be told to make changes to that program in a split second, to find trainers to do that. So I was being thrown curveballs left and right, and it never seemed to stop, to let up. There was no thought given whatsoever to any sort of rationale behind that, or thought to whether or not these changes to the content would even make sense or be understood. So that was very frustrating. I was denied resources. At the time, computers were just getting into state service, the PC. And I was being denied access to a PC. I ended up buying my own PC, a laptop for myself. Once I got that, then of course I was given other access. I was kept out of meetings that the rest of the administration, the agency, was having on different topics. We were going into the computerization of records and applications for training. I was kept out of that, it was only toward the end that I was pulled in and asked for my opinion. And this highly paid consulting firm gave a dog and pony show about how the system was set up. And they said, "What do you think?" I looked at it and I said, "Who told you to do it this way?" And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Well," and they didn't tell me who it was at first. I said, "Well, you've been led to believe that if you do it this way, that's going to solve all of our problems for registering people for training. But what you've just done is you've created 3 or 4 times more work for everybody involved, because every time a person has to sign up for training, we have to open up an entirely new record. Why the heck didn't you put their identifying number in the first place, in the beginning of the program? That way we would just reopen their program." And they looked at each other, they looked around, and the next thing I knew, I was told, I found out later that it was the director of the program that led them astray. The next thing I knew, the whole project was canceled. And And so that was $1 million of development money that was blown by this person. And yeah, that was one of about 7 programs that she totally ruined. So it was abusive, exclusionary, and I had actually helped her to get into that position by giving the nod to letting her get in.
And it seems like it's still somewhat raw, even after all these years, to talk about it or think about it.
It never goes away. You know, get a little bit more perspective on it, and but yeah, still very angry. Yeah. And there are other details too, but I wouldn't want to get into that.
Sure. No, you also talked about with the renegotiating that you came up with some criteria that describes bullying with practices. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, in negotiating the contract, we wanted to use the Healthy Workplace Bill as our template for the language, and of course, negotiations has to be acceptable to both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first hurdles was, well, let's make this language more proactive, more positive, because we don't want to name bullying. We don't want to put bullying down in a contract article. So okay, so we thought about the need for mutuality and respect in the workplace, and so that was part of the negotiations. And then we struggled at the time over the definition. And definition seems to continue to be part of the process of the law, getting the law enacted and getting policies in place and articles negotiated. We're dealing with a behavior. Bullying is a behavior, it's not a thing. It's an act. You act by doing certain things. So definitionally, what was more helpful was to describe recognizable clusters of behaviors that we could all agree on. And those 3 clusters were, what are the humiliating behaviors, the hostile behaviors, hostile, humiliating, and intimidating behaviors that are exhibited by someone in authority. And to this day, I still tell people, forget about the term bullying. Forget about it. Because as people complain about what's going on, invariably they latch onto the word bullying real quick. And in doing that, it keeps them away from better explaining what actually happened to them. And that's what I'm always digging for. I'm always digging for what did the person say to you? What did they do? What emails were sent? What memos were given to you? How did your peers treat you? So in what ways were you being treated in a humiliating fashion? And when you start asking those questions, the picture starts unfolding. And once I get the picture unfolding, then I know that I've got something that I can do something with. But to focus on this jargon of bullying doesn't help the process. So having definitions, we have sufficient definition for the bill, for the Healthy Workplace Bill. It's defined well, more than well enough. It's very similar to the laws on sexual harassment. There's more than adequate guidance for people to be able to latch onto.
And you said that once you renegotiated the contract, people were saying they thought the floodgates of legal, litigation would open up. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, at the time, this was 2008, 2009. The fear in negotiating this new article by the Commonwealth was that they worried, probably that they were doing such an abysmal job in managing people that people would be filing grievances left and right. So, so they thought, grievances, ooh, arbitration. We don't want to have arbitrations. That costs money. So we'll limit it to only going as far as step 3. So that was one thing. So we agreed that, you know, to get the language in the contract, we would limit it to step 3, only to go as far as step 3. Now, after several years of having the article in place, I can demonstrate that we have not opened up any floodgates, and I could also demonstrate that we've had so many successes that there's been no need for a clause for arbitration. We've been able to work well enough together to get these situations understood, investigated, understood, and ameliorated. So, without having to go to the judge. You know, I don't want to go to judges. I don't want to go to somebody else. I want to be able to work it out. You know, and that's what labor relations ought to be, about working things out.
You said step 3 goes to step 3. What is that?
Well, in our contract language, a complaint is filed by a member. And the complaint gets written up and sent over for a labor relations advisor to investigate. So they read the complaint and they set about contacting people in the workplace to investigate the complaint. And then we've recently won a step 3 decision that says that the complaint needs to be responded to, and the union needs to be notified of the outcome of the investigation. That's important. It was always the intention of the article to get that information. We want a proper response. So if for example, the complainant doesn't like the outcome of the investigation and the recommendations that were made as a result of it, they can then immediately file a step 3 grievance hearing, so that their complaint will be heard by a third party. It's still a person in the administration of the Commonwealth. But it provides a yet another objective set of ears to listen to what's going on. So, for example, if I, being someone who gets really into some of these things, for some unknown reasons, I don't know why, but if we didn't get where we needed to go because of the investigation, if we were rebuffed, in other words, what I would plan to do is have a real big dog and pony show at step 3, where I basically kind of subpoena the world and have everybody come in and testify as to what exactly happened, to make it incredibly difficult for anybody who's sane to say, no, there wasn't a problem here. So I will close down a workplace if I have to, in order to get the facts listened to. And the Commonwealth doesn't want that to happen, so they better do an investigation, do their job, and hear the matter and resolve it before more people get hurt and before more work gets slowed down. So it's you know, carrot and stick approach.
You mentioned that, and I noticed that when we videotaped before at your office, that there are instances with some pretty hard evidence of how you in particular and your union have saved the Commonwealth money by
Yeah.
enforcing this anti-bullying initiative that you've taken on.
Yeah.
Could you share any of that information with us?
Sure. Yeah, there was one instance in particular that was pretty egregious. We had a director of IT services in one of the state agencies responsible for implementing this huge changeover to web-based services. So this guy may have had some good technical prowess, being able to figure out and work with other people for changing their IT system. But he had no people skills. And he happened to hire an assistant IT manager who had zero people skills. And this person was cruel, was abusive, was randomly moving people around. Basically what he was trying to do is he was trying to move people out of their jobs, state jobs, and hire in his own people. And he was doing it in such a way that he tried to make people look bad. He was not properly following what was needed to be followed for creating the new sites and infrastructure. He basically wasn't following the mission of the agency, but yet he was very harsh on folks. For example, there was one pregnant member who had some real medical needs and need for having a schedule that she would be able to work through. He went about changing her work schedule and changing it in a way that prevented her from being able to use public transportation. He knew what he was doing. He was just really sadistic, this guy. So now this affected 70 people, and I literally had 70 people yelling and screaming and complaining to me. So I went about gathering the evidence, gathering the facts, and I spoke with their labor relations person, and it wasn't enough information for them. I said, okay. So then I went about and I did a survey. And I surveyed all of these folks on what exactly was going on. And I developed a laundry list of problematic behaviors. And when I presented that to the administration, they literally walked the person, they did a perp walk with the guy. They walked him out of the door after that. That immediately set the whole IT office back in sync with what they were at risk of losing $11 million in bond money that was allocated. This was under contract with another provider. They were about to lose that money. This put them back on track. They got another person involved in the schedule. That person was perfectly fine. My members knew what they were doing all along, and they just continued on and corrected the problems, and the project finally was resolved. Saving the Commonwealth $11 million. Yeah. Now that doesn't go into any detail at all about how the initial contract was so poorly written by somebody higher up in the administration, but that person has since left. Always it's the union membership who's left holding the bag doing the work, and they were trying to do the work and they were interfered with by this person, by this assistant director, and implicitly the director of the operation.
So you're the head of an organization that has taken workplace bullying very, very seriously, and put actionable processes in place. And this seems to be the argument that a lot of people make against a law is, well, won't everyone do that? So I pose that question to you. So you're in the position where you have done something about it, but yet there are a lot of other unions, companies that don't. Do you think that these people are going to take it on themselves, or do you think it's something that needs to?
I don't think. I think it's hard, very hard for people to recognize their limitations and make changes. And for people in power, I think it's particularly more difficult for them. I'm thinking of why there was a need for having legislation in the first place for helping people with disabilities, or responding to people who are being sexually harassed in the workplace. Why did that go on for so long? Why didn't people recognize it? Why didn't they see it taking place? That's why there's a need for the law to be in place, to basically say to the world at large, this is not the way we treat people when they're at work. You don't go to work to be harassed, to be intimidated, to be threatened, to be mistreated, or treated subhuman. You don't go to work for that. You go to work, to do a job that you were asked, if you were interested in doing. That's what you go to work for. Not to be treated as a subhuman and undermined for strange reasons. So that's kind of why there's such a need for the law.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And I would expect that if your union didn't have the policies in place, that $11 million would just be gone right now.
Yeah, that $11 million would have been gone, and other hundreds of thousands of dollars, and lives and careers would be gone. So there's a cost to the organization, and the cost to businesses is a loss of creativity in the business, flexibility, awareness, and an ability to respond to changing conditions. What bullying does is it causes everyone to start closing down and closing in upon themselves. Sort of like a survival of the fittest, so to speak. I think it's part of our human condition. And I think we need to be better at that. I think we need to pay conscious attention to that. There's an awful lot of denial. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt. So there's a lot of denial that goes in place. But I'm able to show factually that things are happening and that there are costs involved, and places improve, workplaces improve. This is a good thing. I just don't understand why it hasn't been adopted sooner. I'm continually being frustrated.
Yeah, I bet. As a union leader, could you talk a little bit about how does this show your union members that there's always something new, there's always something different, there's always something coming up that as a leader you have to always be aware of in order to find ways that your members need to be protected and served?
Well, I think part of leadership is to pay attention to trends and pay attention to needs, to simply listen, basically. That's leadership. leaders listen. Good leaders listen. Bad leaders don't listen. Bad leaders tell. So that's leadership 101. With regard to bullying in the workplace, I mean, NAGE is really on the cutting edge of this. I've brought this to NAGE. NAGE has in turn reciprocated and helped to develop and refine and support and shepherd this along. And for the right reasons, because we firmly believe that this is not just for union people, this is for everyone. All working people, men and women, need to be protected in this way. Sort of like all people deserve to have a weekend, you know, or all child labor is bad. This is like all bullying in the workplace is bad, and for all people. So you know, we get that, we understand that. I won't speak to, I can't speak to other unions, but I do know that Mary Kay Henry, who's the international president of the SEIU, she gets it. And I had the opportunity of being with Gary Namey and with Mary Kay Henry down in Washington, D.C. At the National Press Club in 2012, I think it was. And Mary Kay gave a great speech to the press. And I was really delighted that she got it. Yeah, so anything that we can do, you know, like this to get the awareness going and to help people to understand that it's okay to have laws against bullying. It's a good thing. Is what I'm about. I'll do anything I can to get that, to make that happen. Within my own union as well. You know, I give workshops and trainings. I just gave 2 workshops at our National Executive Board meeting 2 weeks ago, and it was very well received. People really got it, and it makes more work for me because they call me up and say, "Greg, what do you do?" You know?
That's great. I'm trying to think, is there anything that you feel that we haven't covered? Is there something else that you would like to say or repeat now that we don't have quite so much noise?
Yeah, it worked out good. Well, it's trying to pass the Healthy Workplace Bill has been, I took this on as sort of as education for me, in-house training for myself. I'm not a trained lobbyist, and I was genuinely curious, what does it take to get a bill passed? And holy mackerel. It is really something. I really appreciate the lobbyists that we have, Ray and Jim. They have done so much, and they've taught me so many things about state government and the legislative process. So that's been both frustrating and enjoyable at the same time, if you can imagine. And working with, I'm just very fortunate, and we're all very fortunate to have Professor David Yamada being the author of the Healthy Workplace Bill and understanding so exquisitely the factors and the legal factors and dynamics and that go into creating a law and helping to move the law. And then, of course, Gary Namey, who started off this whole thing because of the way his wife was treated many years ago. A psychologist, a PhD psychologist, being bullied. How can that happen? You know? So he started off this whole thing. So I've gotten to know Gary and David well, and that's been special. That's been good. Very good.
That's great. Ken, anything you think we should try and revisit while we've got a little bit of quiet? Doesn't make that much.
It's a great question, but there was so much great material in there that I can't
Okay.
actually even remember a specific thing that we should do again. I mean, it was just, there's so much meat there that we could do the whole thing again.
Yes.
Well, let it kick around, and
sure.
I'm certainly always
We could
available,
do, if the noise level was too, because you were terrific, and what you said is.
Oh, I hope so.
No,
I hope it was
great.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, my position is really unique. I mean, I get to do it. I get to, I get to take care of problems, help people out, lead others and instruct others into in what this is all about, work with legislators and in trying to make societal changes. And this is awesome, absolutely awesome. It's just, so this is, it's fun.
I could ask a question.
Well, let me just.
Sure.
So the one question that I would ask would be, could you talk about how, have your own personal experiences, has this given you a perspective that helps you understand and the people that are going through this, the other targets, and given you more empathy for this?
Well, empathy is a key word here. Empathy is a thread that runs throughout all of this, the Healthy Workplace Bill, and all aspects of what we're going about. My background is in child welfare social work. I was a social worker. I worked with children and families who were abusing, sexual abuse, child neglect, domestic violence, substance abuse. So the core issues involved in all of those things are power and control over others. Power and control over others is behind bullying in the workplace. It's the misuse of power, the abuse of power. It's a big part of it. So, and being a social worker and having worked with so many difficult situations, you either make it through that or you don't. Luckily, I was able to make it through that and maintain my empathy toward others. That isn't the case for many, many people who work in the field of child welfare. High turnover rate, very difficult field. So for whatever reasons, this has kind of everything that I've learned or known in child welfare practice has been readily translated over into this whole area, working with adults. It gives me really great understanding of both the systems issues, the dynamics that are going on within the workplace and within the individuals. So I have a leg up on a lot of people with this. When I went for training with Gary Namey out in Bellingham, Washington, the first afternoon, first day that I was there with him, after about an hour, he started going around asking our small little group, their experience, and he said, "Greg, so what do you think about this?" And I told him, this is what I think is going on with that particular situation. And he looked at me and said, "Okay, you got it." I thought, oh, okay. So we became fast friends, with that. I did understand the dynamics that were going on. So that's been very helpful. It's what's been a challenge to me is getting other people to understand. Legislators, politicians, agency heads, people like that, and trying to learn and understand why they might be so hesitant to start looking at it. That's been hard. That's been frustrating.
Yeah, it does seem to be way off a lot of people's radars, and
yeah,
I mean, a lot of people, as I'm finishing the interview, people that didn't really get it, all of a sudden at the end of the interview, they're saying, "Oh, yeah, now that you're mentioning this, they start thinking about and situations from their past in this context of bullying, and
Yeah.
you can almost see a little light up.
Yeah. So I have to be very patient. I find myself having to stop myself because I want to reach out and say, "Don't you get it?" But you can't do that. You can't move people that way. They especially legislators. They'll use their power.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Wow, I think that was terrific. Unless there's something else you want to add, I think that's.
Not at this point. So.
Quick.
Oh yes.
So how, and you can pretend I'm Jay is me. How do you draw a line between mismanagement and bullying? Because they could kind of look alike sometimes.
Mismanagement versus bullying. Well, you're looking for a number of indicators, and one of the biggest indicator is that the person who is doing this mismanagement is overstepping their bounds, their authority, and two other things: not being in sync with the mission of the agency, or what the core work is about, or what the agency is trying to accomplish or get across to the public. So they're out of sync with that, and they're out of sync with that because the world revolves around them. That's why. It's all about them. It's not about the worker. It's not about the agency. But they're really good at telling the agency head, "Oh yeah, everything's great. Everything's working out. Yeah, oh yeah, we're right on line." So very often agency heads don't know that some of this stuff is going on. Then the other thing is this sense of the lack of empathy toward others. Any empathy that if you really press some of these bad characters, the empathy is all directed back at themselves. It's a reflection on themselves. They feel bad. It's their feelings. It's their authority that's being challenged. It's their not being listened to. It's their not being understood, not the other person. So empathy, again, is a core thread, and not really being in sync with the core actions of the agency. And when you start picking apart the scenario, the context of the bullying, and you look at it in look at things in behavioral terms, it becomes much more clear. So for me, it's really important that anyone who does the investigations of these 6A complaints knows what they're doing and is able to do a good investigation. I spend a lot of time helping my members to define things or write things up in ways that are going to be behavioral and understandable to others. If you put a lot of time into that up front, it makes all the rest of it a lot easier and flow better.
Yeah, because it also sounds to me like, of course, there's always the argument of incompetence, so, in terms of the manager. But it seems that a lot of these bullying stories that I've heard from targets, the bullies or the managers overstep the bounds of traditional business relationships.
Yeah, and that speaks to the abusiveness. When Gary Namey coined the term workplace bullying, or used the term bullying, he did so because it was easily recognizable by the majority of people. Most people were able to say, "Yeah, that's a bully," or so, and that phenomena persists. You know a bully when you see a bully. It's kind of that simple. Yet definitionally, what we need to do is we need to show that in stark terms, so that Joe Schmo will be able to understand it.
Right.
So using simple language and descriptive language, I'm like a broken record with that, you know, because you know, people just they don't generally converse like that, you know.
Because it also seems that they're, you know, one would think that a typical business relationship, you don't call someone at home and complain about something or give them, you know, there are some boundaries that are somewhat understood by, you know, people as being within the scope of business.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that these bullies frequently live outside those boundaries.
Yeah, life on their own terms, and life to suit them and their ego, and and as I had said earlier, some of these people have exquisite skills in being able to manipulate and control others. In fact, I came to learn that there is a book that was published. What a great society we have. The book is entitled "What We Can Learn from Psychopaths." I think that says more about our society than it says about about good management. And indeed, there's probably a large number of almost psychopaths from the book of the same title, Almost a Psychopath. There are a large number of people who are extraordinarily self-centered, having no empathy, no concern whatsoever for others, and they're only about themselves in getting ahead. And that's it. That's what they're all about. I've seen a few of them. They are a sight to behold. I can't for the life of me learn from them. Just don't have it in me. You don't have it in you. This is, I think it's probably genetic for some of these people.
Right, or chemical,
Yeah.
Sociopaths.
Sociopaths, almost sociopaths, almost a psychopath.
And neither is really a word that's, you know, it's not official. It's not a diagnosis you can make of someone. They have social disorders.
Well, I'm not a licensed clinician, so I
Right.
can't do that.
Yeah.
I am a social worker, a licensed social worker,
Right.
so I can speak to it a little bit. But it's not the kind of language that is used in businesses. You know, they don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. You know, it's what am I going to be able to do to get through the next crisis, kind of thing.
How are we doing time-wise?
I think we can, you mean like clock time or
No,
tape
no,
time?
tape time.
I think we've got about 12 minutes.
Okay, great.
If I'm reading the counter correctly.
Yeah. There's an interesting TED Talk on this about sociopaths and psychopaths.
I bet there is.
You know, as managers, and you know, it talks quite a bit about bullying and
Does it?
yeah.
Ah, excellent.
And the person actually estimates that 10% of the population suffers from some sort of social disorder that would you know, be commonly referred to as sociopath or psychopath.
Yeah, Ron Schulman from Harvard University wrote a book called Almost a Psychopath. And he looks at the dynamics and the indicators of psychopathy. And his estimate is that rather than there being a hard and fast 3% of the population that are true psychopaths, that there is probably about 15% of the population that is almost a psychopath, meaning that the only thing that's keeping them from the diagnosis is being caught. And that's scary. Now, I've run across a couple of people who I think are almost psychopaths, and they are a sight to behold. If you can imagine, all of their thinking is focused on controlling everyone else around them. And there's research to show that this has a genetic component, that there's actually a deficit in the ability of the person to empathize with others. that fits in with what I said, about people who act this way need to be stopped. They won't stop until they are stopped.
Right.
So it's a little bit self-reinforcing there, the
Mhm.
research.
And these things need to be legislated because there isn't any other way that they're gonna stop or be stopped.
No, right. Yeah, sometimes people, you may run across in some of your interviews, you may run across bullies who are described, people who are described as bullies, who found their niche in the organization, and they had particular skill sets that were valued by the key administrators. If a person finds themselves in that kind of a scenario, they have a tough road. They're in a tough position. They're going to probably end up having to leave the organization. The law would provide some protections there, because the organization would have to have policies in place and have some training in place, and there would be some awareness, some light shown on these kinds of people. But again, some people are really good at getting ahead over the broken backs of others, and I see very often in abusive management situations this pairing of a head of the agency who doesn't want to be a bad guy. He doesn't want to act like a bad guy. He just wants to be the nice, all-knowing boss who's knows what needs to be done, but they hire someone invariably, or someone finds them who is just a mean-spirited control freak who does the dirty work, the heavy lifting for this guy. So you have this kind of pattern that happens often enough.
Right. The good guy and then the good guy's henchman.
Yeah.
Well, it's yeah.
Good cop, bad cop kind of thing. Yeah.
It is. I mean, I've seen it several times where you have a head of an organization who's, especially in artistic organizations or other things, who comes across as being,
Yeah.
wonderful and everyone loves him, and he's like an uncle or a favorite, grandparent or something. But their right-hand people are just the worst, most miserable,
Yeah.
mean, nasty folks who, I don't think it's accident. I don't think it's by accident.
Yeah. I suppose it's a step up for some of these folks to recognize their deficits and say to themselves, either consciously or unconsciously, well, maybe I need someone who's going to be able to do this for me. I guess that's a step up from someone who just says, I want to hire someone that's going to be just mean and dastardly toward my employees, as though that's the way you treat everybody.
Mhm.
Right. It's quite a wild and wonderful world out there.
Great. I think that we've more than covered everything. That was terrific.
Okay.
Um,
Well, we're up some quiet tone.
Sure.